Even some of the foods that are generally thought of as healthy for us can be downright dangerous for our delightful dogs to dine on. But how can you know what foods are toxic to your terrier? Because of their versatility and nutrient value, the humble potato is used in many dishes, in most countries, all over the world. And although boiled or baked potato is fine for our pets to eat, you should never give your dog raw white potato to munch down on. White potatoes are part of the nightshade family of vegetables and contain a chemical called solanine, which is toxic to dogs. So think twice before scraping your kitchen cuttings into the dog bowl for your slobbering sous chef to snack on, as solanine intoxication could cause symptoms such as lethargy, diarrhea, or vomiting. Similarly to potatoes, tomato plants are part of the nightshade family, and their stems and leaves also contain solanine. Although ripe tomatoes are non-toxic to dogs and are a good snack to give your precious pooch, it's best not to feed them any green part of the plant or unripe fruit. Green tomatoes, tomato stems, and tomato leaves also contain a chemical called tomatine, which is toxic to dogs and can cause the same host of symptoms as solanine poisoning. Although both cooked potato and ripe tomato is okay for your dog in moderation, make sure that the foods are not seasoned, as the seasoning may be a problem for your pet. It's hardly an exaggeration to say that salt is on almost all the food we eat these days, so practice caution when sharing your leftovers with your four-legged friend. Even a teaspoon of salt is potentially dangerous to a petite pup and can lead to a whole host of symptoms ranging from vomiting and diarrhea to seizures, tremors, and even death in severe cases. If you suspect that your dog may have ingested a troubling amount of table salt, be on the lookout for signs of salt poisoning, such as decreased appetite, increased urination, excessive thirst, and lethargy. Not feeding your dog spoiled or moldy food is another piece of advice you shouldn't just take with a pinch of salt. Moldy and spoiled foods may contain contaminants called tremorgenic mycotoxins, which are metabolites produced by fungi or mold. The most common symptoms of toxicity from ingesting moldy or spoiled foods are tremors and seizures, and it's best to visit your vet as soon as possible if you suspect your pet may be suffering from the effects of eating moldy food. Giving your dog activated charcoal can also help quell the symptoms of toxicity while you're on the way to the vet, as the charcoal will absorb the toxic substances in your dog's stomach and intestine. Fatty foods are also considered toxic for dogs, as they don't just have the potential to upset your dog's stomach and cause vomiting and diarrhea, but can also lead to pancreatitis, an inflammation of the pancreas. It's not just the obvious foods like fried chicken, burgers, and bacon you need to be on the lookout for. Seemingly innocuous foods like macadamia nuts and avocado pears have a very high fat content that can lead to your furry friend having an adverse reaction to these fatty foods. The high fat content of avocados is not the only danger the fruit poses to your pet. Avocados contain persin, a fungicidal toxin that can potentially cause serious health problems for your avo-munching mutt. Although dogs are thought to be more resistant to persin than other animals, it's best to avoid adding them to their diet, as they can lead to vomiting and diarrhea. Popular beverages like coffee and tea should also be avoided, as the caffeine in these drinks raises their blood pressure and can lead to cardiac arrhythmias, which are potentially dangerous for their health. Coffee also helps loosen the bowels, as any regular coffee drinker can tell you, and the same effects can be seen on our pets and can cause diarrhea and even vomiting. The caffeine in tea and coffee can also make your dog lose muscle control, which may lead to tremors and seizures. A combination of seizures and diarrhea is probably best avoided, for reasons best left to the imagination. Another common food additive that can cause your dog to seize is xylitol. Although artificial sweeteners such as xylitol may not trigger an insulin response in humans and is considered safe for us to consume, the same cannot be said about our canine compatriots. Ingesting even a small amount of xylitol can cause your pet's blood sugar levels to drop dangerously low, as it triggers a massive release of insulin from the pancreas. This drop in sugar level, or hypoglycemia, can occur as quickly as 15 minutes after ingesting xylitol and can cause symptoms such as staggering, weakness, disorientation, collapse, and the seizures we mentioned earlier. Although symptoms of xylitol poisoning can sometimes take as quick as 15 minutes to present themselves, some dogs only present symptoms after 12 to 24 hours. So it's best to monitor your artificially sweetened Staffy for that period of time, or take them to the vet immediately just to be safe. Pop quiz. What is the similarity between your neighbor being electronically tagged and things that are bad for dogs? Booze. Alcohol consumption isn't just bad for rational decision making, it's very detrimental for your dog's health too. Even a relatively small amount of alcohol consumption can cause symptoms such as depressed breathing, low body temperature, increase in blood acidity, vomiting, low blood sugar levels, sedation, coma, and seizures. Large amounts of alcohol consumption can sometimes even be fatal to our four-legged friends, so it's best to make sure that we don't accidentally combine our wines with our canines. Wine in its non-fermented, solid form is also poisonous to dogs. What is non-fermented solid wine, you may ask? Grapes, of course. It's not known exactly why grapes are toxic for dogs to eat, but studies have pointed towards tartaric acid being the main culprit, the ingestion of which causes renal failure or proximal renal tubular necrosis in our furry friends. Similar to grapes, raisins should also be avoided as they contain the same tartaric acid as their non-dried counterparts. The symptoms of raisin and grape poisoning include vomiting, lethargy, lack of appetite, and diarrhea, which is enough to make anyone upset. Speaking of things that make you want to cry, onions are also extremely toxic to dogs. Onions and garlic are amongst the most dangerous human foods that our dogs can consume because they contain a compound known as N-propyl disulfide, which is a pale yellow liquid with an irritating smell, often used as a food additive or synthetic flavoring. This compound can lead to anemia in our furry friends as it breaks down the red blood cells and causes oxidative damage in our dog's body. The usual signs of poisoning usually present themselves after ingestion of onions, such as vomiting, intestinal pain, diarrhea, decreased appetite, drooling, and depression. If larger quantities of onion are ingested, symptoms such as elevated heart rate, weakness, panting and increased respiratory rate, red-colored urine, and pale gums may be observed. The only thing more toxic for our dogs than onions is chocolate. Chocolate may be a moment on the lips and a lifetime on the hips for us humans, but it has far more serious side effects for our canine companions than unwanted weight gain. Chocolate contains theobromine, a chemical compound that dogs cannot effectively metabolize. Theobromine affects the central nervous system, respiratory system, and cardiovascular system in dogs, and also has an effect on the digestive system, adding insult to injury. The first sign that your dog has theobromine poisoning are throwing up blood or hematemesis, and extreme thirst, also known as polydipsia. The best thing to do if your dog has ingested chocolate is to get them to a veterinarian as soon as possible. But if that's not an option, you can induce vomiting if your curious chocolate chomper has munched down on the offending deadly dairy within an hour. A solution of 1:1 3% hydrogen peroxide solution in water ingested by your pooch will induce vomiting and can be a solution to the poisoning in extreme cases. If your dog has ingested any of the above foods, it's best to get them to the vet as soon as you can, induce vomiting, or give them activated charcoal tablets to absorb as much of the toxic substance as quickly as possible. But the best way to keep your dog safe is to keep human foods out of reach and be aware of what may cause your doggy toxic harm. Although the pound is a bit of a toxic place for dogs in general, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure.